Aloha, welcome to Jordan's Journal. I'm Representative Joe Jordan, and today I have as my special guest Representative Sylvia Luke, who happens to be the Finance Chair of the House Finance Committee. Aloha.
Aloha.
So could you explain a little bit about who you are, how long you've been here, and what's your position here in the House?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be on your show. And as you indicated, I represent District 25, and that's Nu'uanu to Punch Bowl. I've been a representative for 16 years now. This is my 16th year.
Okay.
And during my tenure here at the legislature, I've also been chair of Judiciary, Vice Speaker. I've also chaired the Special Committee on War Preparedness around the time that we were anticipating war with the Middle East and the impact of that on Hawaii's economy. This year, the last 2 years, it's been a privilege to serve on the Finance Committee as chair, and I've really greatly appreciated your impact and input into the committee as a member of Finance Committee.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. So I'm a newbie here. I've only been here about 4 years. So I look up to representatives who've been here a lot longer than me and have a lot more experience, and I can glean off of that. So working on finance with you, we work on the bills, and we work on the largest bill, which is actually the budget. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the process for the budget and maybe a little bit about what happened this year.
Okay. So in the beginning of the year, as you know, Joe, a lot of people were talking about the $844 million surplus.
Correct.
And as both you and I know, that $844 million surplus was only a snapshot in time on June 30th, 2013.
2013, right?
2013.
Okay.
So by the time we enter session in January of 2014, we already didn't have that $844 million.
Okay.
Because since June 30, 2013 till we started session, we already started spending it down because I think what we know is since that time, the governor and the legislature funded collective bargaining raises.
Correct.
We set aside money into the rainy day and hurricane fund. And then during session, what had happened is the Council on Revenues, which provide projection for the economic forecast, downgraded our economic forecast for the future by significantly. So all those things had major impact on how we craft the budget. So at the time that we crafted the budget, we were looking at about $300 million less than the $844 million that we were, people been talking about. I think the unfortunate part is because there were so much focus on the $844 million surplus, it created a lot of expectation and false expectations, either within the public community and the departments as well. So this year, as you saw, a lot of the departments came in and asked for different items. And when we asked, okay, why are you asking for these funding or this type of amounts? We routinely heard people say, oh, because we're sitting on a lot of money. And so it was a very difficult task in dispelling that rumor and dispelling that misunderstanding that there was this $844 million that we were free to spend. The other thing is we don't spend down everything at the end of the year.
No, we don't want to.
Because one of the things, as you know, is we need to at least have a good carryover balance.
Correct.
And this year, we're happy to say that, because you and I work very hard on the budget along with the rest of the finance members, we will be, the budget that we are going to pass tomorrow is is it going to be tomorrow? Is this going to be airing tomorrow? Or?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the budget that we are going to be passing this year, we will be having about $350 million of carryover. And so what that's going to do is help ensure that for the future here we have money for funding important projects or important programs, or next year if there's money left over, we want to set aside more money for Hurricane Relief Fund, more money for Rainy Day Fund. And because especially in your district and other rural areas, Hurricane Fund is very important to make sure that we protect our citizens just in case there's disasters or things like that happen.
That's true. And having those reserves, like a hurricane or a rainy day fund, that also helps us when we go and do our bonding, right?
Right.
And it helps us show that we're in a very positive state for our state, and we get a better bond rating. Therefore, costing us less in borrowing money. So it's important to have those. And I think
Right.
that was one of the decisions that was made last year to
Right.
make sure we wanted to fund them
Right.
not only to the amount that the governor wanted, but even higher.
Right.
To make sure we can have more put away and have a larger sum. So in this budget process, I think one of it was dealing with, the outside people saying, we've got all this money and we really didn't have it, and how do we dispel that and how do we keep things moving forward with make it equitable for everybody and still have a balance to carry forward, because we don't know what the Council of Revenues is going to say in the next 3 months or 6 months. It could even be downgraded even further, therefore challenging what that bottom line money
Right.
is going forward,
Right.
correct?
Right.
So, yeah, so I think it's been quite interesting watching this session. And then we all know that emergency situations pop up. We can have a disaster, we can have, an opportunity to purchase something. And that's why sometimes we need those carryovers to have that for those options. So,
Absolutely. And currently, I think in the rainy day fund and the hurricane relief fund, we have about close to $200 million, little over $200 million. So we will ensure that we will take care of some future emergencies.
yeah. And then we always have bargaining contracts that will
Right.
come up to continuously. So we always have to make sure that that reserve is there at our bottom line to make sure, contracts may pop up, but just like we had 2 carryover contracts this year. So we're going to solve the Unit 6 and Unit 9,
Right,
correct?
right.
So those are things we also have to take in accountability, where we just can't keep bloating the budget and not having dollars, because our main source of revenue is pretty much TAT or general excise.
Absolutely. And, for the edification of the public, Unit 6 and Unit 9 are the nurses and
correct.
principals, and those people provide significant amount of service to the public. So it was important for us to fund those.
Yeah, and I think the nurses was quite a long time in coming.
It was. And we're very happy that they were able to resolve it during this session.
Yeah, because if they were to resolve it after the session, then we may have to come in, or we have to hold off on paying those until the following
Right,
year.
right.
And then sometimes that may cost us more because we might not have the money at that point in time. So all those things are coming into play. It's not just saying, hey, we're going to finish this budget in 2 or 3 months, but we have all these moving pieces that the finance chair as yourself has to deal with,
Right.
and then dealing with the Senate side and making sure everybody comes to some kind of mutual understanding on things. I think some people think, well, it's easy. Why can't you just balance it? And we do. We have accountability through our, I think it's our state constitution that we
Right.
have to have a balanced budget for almost 6 years, and we're going out just not a year at a time.
Yeah.
So I think, as you know, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, we really didn't have a lot. Our
Right,
reserves were down to like 25 or 50
Right.
million dollars, which is like saying you only had $10 left in your checking account. And I think we have to be accountable to the constituents of the state, as well as the dollars. Because this is everybody's dollars, not just ours.
Right. And I think this year, the Finance Committee overall, including yourself, we have been very conservative how we
yes.
spend our money. And I think both you and I agree that we look at the state's finances and we look at it as if we are stewards of taxpayers' money.
That's correct.
So I'm not sure. I think you kind of touched upon the fact that, about a few years back, we were in a deficit situation, and we learned from those experiences, and we don't want to get into that situation again. So one of the questions people asked me was, okay, if, let's say, we had the $844 million, are you being too conservative, and shouldn't you be spending down to restore some of these services? And I think you and I both agree that should not be the way that we do business. We should look at every program and every request that come in with a very cautious look and think about, okay, if we were to run in a deficit situation again, do we want to revert to increasing fees or increasing taxes or cutting major programs or doing furlough Fridays? I'd rather do a cautious approach and not fund certain things, which is going to have a huge impact in the future, as opposed to going back to furlough Fridays.
Yeah, that's correct. I think for me, I would also err on the caution too, because we don't want to start creating new programs, therefore we couldn't fund them in the next 4 or 5 years, versus looking at what we have already. How do we shore up what we have? And if we were doing without it, maybe we should do without it. And I think that cautious approach was really good. You looked at a lower projection, being very cautious about the budgets, and we still had to come down further from your cautiousness. And sometimes you have to err on, let's be a little conservative instead of just spending it all, because if it's all spent, I'm not sure where we're going to get the money from.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's when we talk about even having 300 million carryover, that's not a lot of money when we really think about it, because once we step out of here, one of our revenues is going to be taxes, income taxes. Income taxes are completed by now.
Right.
So you're not going to be bringing in that revenue the next 6 months of the year. We're going to be relying upon tourism with the transit accommodation tax, or businesses with their general excise tax, and that's pretty much where our revenues come from for the state. And I know I've been here a short time, but I'm sure you guys had those discussions about if they increase the general excise. I mean, we're just going to get this huge outcry from the average citizen here saying, just that 0.5% is going to really hurt.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Being cautious about what we have, I think we should be going back, like you were saying, maybe looking at the departments, having them become more accountable for the budgets they've had, being able to tell us what every dime or nickel is spent for. I think that's, the more cautious approach. And really that can't be done in just 2 years.
Right.
I mean, it takes a little bit of time to do that. I know you were looking at special funds over this last session. We're going to be looking at that going forward a little bit more. I think we recognize that those things should be looked at a little bit more. And, just educating the general populace about we don't got a lot of money here.
Yeah.
And we got to be conservative and accountable to everybody for it.
And the last 2 years, the Finance Committee really tried to do an approach in truth in budgeting. So,
yes.
That's, as you mentioned, that's why we together we looked at special funds, and we looked at whether special funds has nexus to what it's supposed to do, and if it's something that we're not using anymore, we should repeal them and kind of look at whether it should be reallocated to general funds. It's a complicated work, and it's a lot of work, but I do appreciate you for participating in that and cleaning up some of our books, and this is going to be a long process and making sure that we do it right. The other thing that I think we worked on along with other finance members is really cracking down vacancies in the departments. A lot of these departments, they have vacant positions, and we want them to fund the agriculture inspectors. We want them to fund these tax collection people, but a lot of times the departments are handcuffed because they need those the money in those positions to pay people when they retire. So it's vacation payouts. So we're trying to kind of reverse that trend and have departments. It's almost changing the behaviors of departments, but that's a long process, and we're happy to say that at least 3 departments are participating: Department of Attorney General's Office, Department of Agriculture, and Department of Labor. We have set aside money as a specific vacation payout fund so that they can address those retirement benefits and not hold back filling those vacancies to do that.
Yeah, so I think and like you said, this is going to take some process and some time to get through all these, because we have multiple departments, some very large, some very small, and I think those 3 departments are on the smaller sides versus human services or the health department. So if we start looking at that, I think we'll get a little bit more accountability. Accountability where we can express it out to the general public. We are looking at all these things individually and getting that better relationship between the department and the legislature on how we all become accountable for these dollars. And we had a lot of vacancies. There's a lot of money went to these departments for things that they were funding that maybe we were underfunding the department, and they were having to feel that that's how they had to do it. But I think, to have that working arrangement with them coming forward and saying, here, this is what we need to do, I think that's really a good way to look at it. And we can all become accountable for this budget. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be piece by piece. Getting that faith between us and the departments, and how do we go forward with better government as people ask or request. But I think it's been really good this last session with working on the budget. I know it's a process for all of us to kind of dig down in this and then the more you learn about the process and the departments, I think the better we're going to be about how do we refine everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it's breaking sometimes those old habits of we were trained to do it this way.
Right.
You know, how do we
Right.
try to look anew? I mean, I think we should look anew. Money's not going to be scarce to come by. Maybe there's more effective ways of running certain departments or certain processes in our governments. I think we all should be able to say something works or something doesn't
Right,
work. And
right.
without asking or thinking out of the boxes, we won't know those answers.
Right, right. And it's really going to actually challenge each legislators and subject matter chairs to go into the departments
Correct.
and really dig deep to find out what are the priorities of the departments and how can we restructure or how can we help them to be more efficient and to be more helpful. But you know, it comes down to trust.
Yes.
Because I think over the years, because the legislature has been cutting the departments so much, you know, the departments kind of look at us as the bad guys. So
Yes.
hopefully, you know, if we continue to let them know that, no, we're here to help, we're not here to penalize, and, you know, and rebuild that relationship, I think it will get better.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that I've been trying to work on this last year and acknowledging, hey, well, maybe that's why they're not forthcoming with all this information, because there was no trust for whatever reason there was. And now that you built that trust up, then you start finding out, oh, wow, we really need to help this, or we really should be focusing on this and not focusing on something else. And then how do we build that trust between the departments and with, you know, the two money bodies, WHAM or finance on the House side, and then, you know, and then once you get the information is how do we make this work?
Right.
How do we make it work? Is it something rebuilding or something unbuilding? And really, you know, if we have divisions where we should be charging, you know, fees for services for our departments, then maybe we should be looking at that too, and becoming a little bit more fee-based than, you know, just general fund based.
Right.
But all that, again, all that takes time. It takes
Yeah,
research.
yeah.
It takes what I call, you know, gnawing on the ear,
Yeah.
or always following it, dog-earing it forever.
Yeah.
But some people, I guess, just haven't
Yeah.
decided that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But
And
in
these-
order,
Go
but
ahead.
to create change, there is going to have to be a lot of work put into it. Yeah.
And I think we've made small incremental changes, but it's going to have huge impact in the future.
Oh yes, yes.
And you know, whether it's analysis of special funds or doing vacation payout analysis, vacancies, you know, it's going to have. These are the things that's not going to make the news,
No.
but it will have huge impact on how we deal with the budget.
That's true. So I mean, yeah, you will have these little things that I call them. They're not very fluffy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like people. I don't understand that. I said, but in the overall picture, it's going to make such great change and savings that they look at it like, I don't understand why you're looking at that, but it is. It really does. And I think, and those are some of the things that you don't need your pat on your back. You just know you're doing it for the future or for the betterment of the department or the budget itself. Because I'm sure there's some old techniques that are a little archaic and could be changed with maybe modernization of technology, or you have a better system that you can glean off from another state or something like that.
Absolutely.
But again, it takes the research and the digging and pretty much the time when we're out of session to do all that work.
Yeah. A lot of times our work doesn't just end.
No, it
When
doesn't.
session ends, and you know, during session it's very difficult because we have only 60 session days to cram
Correct.
in a lot of bills, and this year we're passing about 150 bills. But you know, 150 is different subject matters, so we really need to take the time during off session to work up some of these bills and making sure that we have follow up.
Yeah, so I think we've already said, well,
Yeah.
we got some work to do after
Yeah,
session.
yeah,
You know, like we said,
absolutely.
we've even come across some more special funds during
Right.
this last session that needs some attention and needs some reviewing this upcoming intersession, and as well as maybe I'm going to dive down into the department a little bit more, especially on some certain different categories. And you know, work is never done here. It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
isn't. You know, it's how much effort you put into it,
Right.
really, that comes up or crafts that legislation that may be introduced next session, and then how do you express that to people who don't have any comprehension of it, and then, might take a little bit of time to get it passed. So some people think, oh, I can pass a bill in 3 months. That's not real. That's just really not real.
In fact, I think
sometimes.
one person told me the average number of years that that it takes for a bill to pass is about 7.
Wow.
And I mean, we had situation where bills took about 10 years to pass, and hopefully that's an average. So some bills will take shorter time, but it's rare where somebody thinks of an idea and then it passes automatically that year, because it needs to be vetted among the House and Senate, that's 76 members, and vetted through the community and different input. And you actually don't want bills to be passed that easily, because changing law should not be easy. It should be vetted, and we should kind of take our time when we look at different policies and legislation.
Yeah, you hear it from the community out there. Oh, you passed that overnight. No, we didn't. It's probably gone through 7 or 8 hearings. Vetting by almost 76 different people, community members coming and testifying, and every time you see a different point of view of this one piece of legislation, and it takes a while. It really does. But if we don't have that public participation, and if you don't have that dialogue amongst the different members, and with different viewpoints on one paragraph or one bill, then we're never going to know how it is effective once it's implemented.
Absolutely.
So, I tell people, no.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get a bill passed.
Yeah, exactly.
It really does. And there's a lot of outside work on working on the bills outside of just in hearings. Even if something comes up in the hearing, then you got to go meet with parties outside to find out, well, is this testimony accurate? Is that one accurate?
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, probably in the last 3 weeks, I've been relying heavily upon previous testimonies in the hearings, going, well, hey, I'm gonna start telling people, you better make sure you get your testimony in written form, because I've come to rely upon that a lot. And then how do we help in the final few days in conference to say, hey, this was the testimony here, this is the testimony there, and we can kind of weed it down further. But
and I think both you and I really appreciate the public input, because we both are not experts in all the areas, and we depend on people, even if it's just a phone call or email saying, oh, this is problematic because of this, or this is great because of this. I mean, it's so amazing that you run into this one email and you go, oh, okay, so that's where they're trying to go with this issue. So I mean, I think both you and I can't stress enough how important public input is. And
that is so true. That is really, really true. I mean, I engage public dialogue, and my philosophy is we can agree to disagree on the measure, but if they don't participate, then we just don't know. So I greatly encourage people to please call, email, come and testify, or just send me a note, because if we don't hear that argument, then we're not hearing the true picture. I really encourage people to come and speak on measures, even if it's something I've voting no on. In fact, I did. I just got an email over the weekend on a bill that I voted no on, and they're like, please don't vote no on the final reading. And I'm like, And they sent me all their list why, and I still encourage that. I really do. Even, if I'm voting no, then they're still trying to encourage me to please vote yes for some reason.
Yeah,
so.
we do, even if we don't respond to all the emails that come in, we do read them.
I do read them, yes.
We do read them, and the phone calls, and I always hear people saying, oh, you never call me back, but it's during session, it's very hectic. But
That's correct.
I think you and I both want to assure the public that no, we do read, and we do understand the calls that come in.
Yeah, I do. I know my office manager tells me these are all the people that call. I do hear it. I do read emails. In fact, I ran into one lady one time. I didn't even know who she was, and she starts talking, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're the lady from so and so, and from this one, and she goes, how do you know all that? And I said, this is what your email said. She goes, you read emails? I'm like, yes, I do read your emails. I mean, we do. I mean, that's what I do in my downtime, reading emails from constituents or just anybody that sends it to us. I think that's why we have the email process. It's another way people can get information to us without having to come into the building. Because I know people work during our working hours, and that provides them public process. I think we're one of the most open legislatures in the entire country.
Yeah, and this is one of the few buildings where people can come and there's no security.
That's correct.
And people can just walk into our office, and I mean, even the city hall, there's security heavier than us.
Yeah, I've heard it's a lot harder to get to them.
Yeah, and so I think that this is something that we're proud of. We call it the people's house, and we look at them, we look at ourselves as just temporary tenants.
That's right.
And it could be somebody else next year or a few years from now, and so we're just holding space and on behalf of the public. And
yeah, and it's true. Maybe somebody has been working on a bill for 10 years, but that legislator might keep changing over those years. You got to keep re-educating us, or educating the new people on why the bill. I think it's very important for public engagement on all levels. So I'd like to really thank you very much, Chair, again, for joining me for this casual conversation. I'd just like to say aloha. Thank you very much for joining us on Jordan's Journal, and we'll see you soon. Aloha.